I'm Matt,
I'm Kylie.
and we decided to do this video about our infertility journey to help raise awareness about what goes on in the infertility world with couples. We found in our journey that it's actually a lot more common than what you think it would be, and a lot of friends and family might have went through it and you didn't even know it. It's actually what they say is 1 in 8 couples go through.
So Matt and I were best friends in high school, and right after high school when we had graduated, we kind of separated ways. I had always known that how I felt about Matt, but hadn't really shared it with him actually until we re-met back up about 6 months after graduation at a football game, and we both kind of talked about how we had felt, and we both felt the same way, so we decided that it was best that we get back together and try dating and see how it went, and kind of just went from there. So when Matt and I actually started dating, his sister was pregnant right when we started dating and had her first child, which was obviously Matt's niece at the time, and our lives had revolved a lot around kids. We babysat a lot, we spent a lot of time with our family, with our friends, and their kids. So for about a year we just kind of dated and took it slow. Then after that, for a whole year, we really talked about having kids and joked around about it, and we had both felt that we wanted kids but weren't really sure when the time was. I was ready, but kind of just waiting on when he was ready. So one night we were actually just laying in bed, and he looked at me and said, it's time to start having kids. And I kind of thought he was joking, and caught me by surprise, but he was totally serious and I was totally on board. So we just stopped taking pills and started trying for having kids.
So whenever we were decided it was time to try to have our own family and decided that it was time for us to venture on in the next part of our lives, we never dreamt that it would be this difficult. We never expected it to be this difficult. None of our family had issues with it. We assumed it would be your typical pregnancy, and it would be joyful and exciting. And so after our first month of trying, we ran to the store and bought pregnancy tests, and we were so excited to read them and see if it was a positive or a negative. And of course it came back as a negative, and it was kind of a huge letdown. We didn't really know what to expect there, and that kind of led us into more difficult times, I guess. We didn't realize how much time it would actually take at that point.
Growing up, I had always really wanted to be a mother, and I had never really heard of others who struggled like we were going to, we were just getting into. So when we were faced with that, it was kind of a big eye-opener, because we had never heard anybody else at the time that had went through what we were about to go through. So it was really kind of surprising. We obviously knew that miscarriages and things like that were common, but we hadn't really known that people actually struggled to get pregnant. So when it didn't just happen, we kind of didn't know what was wrong, just knew that there was something wrong. We just thought it would be easy, so that was a big challenge for us. So about 6 months into trying, I actually started having a lot of pain and a lot of abnormal kind of
Cycles.
So I actually, at the time, kind of ignored it, and we tried for about 6 more months and still nothing happened. So I finally went to my normal doctor, and she told me that it was just normal cramps, that I was fine. And I really had to, at that time, learn to be a self-advocate, because my doctors really didn't think that there was anything wrong with me. She sent me to the OBGYN, and I met with her, and they also kind of thought that there was nothing wrong, but they sent us for testing both. We were 20 at the time, so we were young. A lot of young people just, get pregnant. So we both went and got testing. He came back super normal. I came back, all my testing was pretty normal. Actually, all of it was normal. I was ovulating, everything was regular, but they didn't really have answers for us as to why it hadn't worked for a year, and it's pretty normal for couples to be able to conceive within a year of trying, and we still hadn't. So my doctor actually suggested that we try an IUI and Clomid. So that's when we were put on fertility medicine. I had to do a lot of monitoring. I was at the doctor's office a lot for them to monitor my eggs to see if they could do the IUI, and it ended up that my body didn't respond to the Clomid the way it was supposed to. My eggs didn't end up growing anywhere remotely to what they needed to be for me to have an IUI, which is kind of the pre-step before in vitro fertilization. So when I found out that wasn't going to work for us, I was at the doctor like 3 times probably that week getting ultrasounds to monitor my eggs, and each time they never progressed. So every time I left, I just kind of felt defeated. So we kind of took a break from the doctors at that point and decided to continue trying because they didn't have any answers for us or really have any next step suggestions. They just said, you'll have to go somewhere bigger than here because we don't really have the resources around here. So we continued to try, and then about another year later, I went back to the doctors and said, it's still not working. I was having so much pain that I couldn't even stand it any longer. So they did a laparoscopic surgery where I was actually diagnosed with endometriosis, which is the main factor that's kind of keeping us now from having kids. They did the surgery and removed it, but they also checked my fallopian tubes. They did the HSG test, which came back. My tubes were blocked, but they had cleared them. So we kind of thought, oh, I'm all cleaned out, I'm ready to go. I'll probably get pregnant right away because that happens for a lot of people. But still, month after month, we got negatives and nothing still happened.
During a lot of that, I always picked on her for being a doctor of her own with WebMD and doing a lot of Google searches. But looking back now, I'm extremely happy that she was smart enough to know that she had something wrong with her own body and that she was an advocate for herself. And a lot of small town doctors may not have the resources to diagnose you with what you are going through, or maybe not able to explain why the infertility issues are there. So don't be afraid to do your own research and go to your doctor with a bunch of questions. I mean, we went through it, and if it wasn't for her, we might not have answers for what we do now.
I think at that point after my surgery, we had already been trying for about 3 years. In 2017. So we had already been trying for 3 years. So it was kind of frustrating. We definitely kind of felt defeated at that point, especially each month. It was just a reminder that we weren't pregnant. We were started to be open with both of our families about the time that we got my surgery. So it was hard knowing that people knew we were trying for kids and it wasn't working out. So that's kind of what made it even more hard, because a lot of our family and our friends knew that we were trying and it still wasn't working, where in the beginning it was kind of just us who knew about it. It was still frustrating and it was still really hard, but when people were kind of counting on you being pregnant, it was a little bit more pressure at that point. So
do you think that like families who think they're being supportive could be a little overbearing? Like, does that get frustrating?
yeah.
Obviously, your family, like we had mentioned, that we talked to them the most, and our friends, our close friends, knew a lot of what we were going through. So, of course, they wanted updates, and they kind of wanted to stay in touch with us and I don't know, I guess get some answers to some of their questions. But at that point, we were kind of wanting to keep it between us because we didn't know where it was going to lead. We were kind of to that point of, is it ever going to happen? Are we going to have to take a different route? So whenever you got the repeated questions of, are you pregnant yet? Or am I getting grandkids yet? Am I getting a niece or nephew yet? Or can we have play dates soon? Or are we going to be pregnant at the same time? Those kind of questions seem to be getting harder and harder. And I know our family and friends didn't mean to upset us, and I know that they meant the best for us, but when they didn't have to go through the difficulties that we are, it kind of, I guess it would, they just didn't understand. They didn't know how we were feeling or how it was actually hurting us.
I think it was hard when I finally started being open about going to the doctor, that each time I had left, that when I got bad news, shortly after there was a phone call asking how the appointment went and what did you find out. And so not only did I have to come home and explain it to Matt, but I had to explain it to all of the other family and friends who also wondered about it, which it's nice that they kind of were there for us, but it's hard to explain when it's not going the way that you had planned for it to go, for them to constantly be reminding you, I guess, kind of that it's not going so well. So I think that was just kind of really hard.
And you could see the disappointment in their eyes also. Like, obviously they wanted it to turn out good for us, and I guess good for them on their end too, because they were expecting a new baby. So seeing the disappointment on not only our faces but on our family and friends' faces too, it gets to you. You don't realize.
Do you have any advice or anything like that for a family who want to be supportive in a situation like this? What they could do instead of just kind of badgering with questions? Do you have any advice for people?
I kind of think for families to be supportive is, like, we all know the process sucks. Like, we all know that it's really hard, but to make comments like, your time is coming, or you're still young and you have time, or we're just waiting on you to have kids. I think all of those comments are kind of really hard for us because we all know we're trying and we all know that it's not working. I think it would just be better if they would kind of just say, I'm sorry, like, I kind of know this sucks. I feel for what you're going through, instead of making comments on, we know you're trying to have kids and it's not working, because that's kind of just a reminder to us that it's not. I think if they were kind of there, just like kind of a shoulder to lean on and say, hey, we're here for you if you need anything, or we're here for you if you want to vent, but we know it's hard. I think that would kind of be more of a supportive approach from families, to just be there if you need something to talk about.
Give space and just be there for them when they're ready to talk, or be there for the excitement of the news if and when it comes. Don't push for it. Let it happen when it happens.
We definitely have our go-to people that we're really comfortable with, and it's the people who give us the space to talk freely on our own when we're ready, instead of asking us every time that we see them, any luck yet? Or have you tried this? That's something that we hear a lot.
You're not doing it right.
This worked for me, maybe you should try this. And, well, we have literally tried everything under the sun. Like, there's outrageous things we've heard, or I've read, or tons of things. Like, not even gonna go into detail about that, but we've tried literally everything. So people offering advice, I mean, in the beginning, it wasn't bad, but 5 years into it, we've tried and tried and tried, so it makes it hard for people to say, oh, well, are you sure you're getting it right? Are you sure it's the right time of the month? Or maybe you're just not trying enough.
And it's hard because it's usually people that didn't have any difficulties being pregnant or starting a family. It all came easy, and hearing advice from them, they just don't understand that it's a process that they didn't have to go through. That it's more than just in between the sheets, I guess. I mean, there's a lot more to the process than what meets the eye. So I guess whenever it comes to holidays and family events and stuff, we love being around kids, and we love our families and getting to spend time with all the new babies and all the nieces and nephews and cousins. I'm the uncle and friend and cousin that gets on the ground and plays with the babies for hours, and I'll play cars and Barbie dolls. And so whenever you come home to an empty house, Christmas gets hard. I
think when we first got together, Christmas was a big thing. We did tons of lights and a huge tree, and we did presents, and as each year has went on, it's just kind of faded. Last year was really a big one because it was our 5th year into trying. We really didn't do a whole lot. We didn't do presents, and we didn't do the lights, and
it was even our first Christmas married.
Yeah.
And we didn't buy each other gifts. We didn't turn on any Christmas lights outside.
We did a tree, and we did family, but it's still hard when you know that's what you want, and you come home and the house is empty, and there's no kids to buy for, or, you know, all of the holidays are really hard because that's all you've been wanting.
Buying chew toys for dogs gets old after a while. You'd much rather buy toys and clothes and see the joy in the kids' faces.
I think we even have discussed, like, you know, what would we buy our kids for Christmas? And have discussed that we don't want to buy them so much toys, we just want it to really be a family time, because that's what we enjoy most, is not even the presents, but just being with the family, and we enjoy that so much that we really just want to be able to do that on our own and look forward to making our own traditions, and so far we haven't been able to do that. I don't know. My biggest struggle was, before we got married, how I felt about marrying him and putting him kind of through this, because it's not him that has the issue, where he could totally have a normal life if he wasn't with me. But I feel like we had conversations where we were okay with adoption and foster
We
care.
discussed a lot before we even knew we were going to have difficulties, that we were going to have a family either way, and that we were going to be happy with our life no matter which path it had to take, and whether it be adoption or foster care or our own. So after dating for 5 years, I guess I finally decided that I would get down on a knee and pop the question. And we were on vacation with her family at the time, and I asked her mom and stepdad, and then we took a walk on the beach, and I proposed on the beach in Ocean City. So after we got married, we decided that it was time that not that we didn't take it serious before, but we would take the next step and try to find a doctor that knew more about our issues and could give us more advice and better intel on what was actually going on.
So I found a doctor about an hour away, but a little bit bigger of a town. And I went to him just kind of seeking answers to see where we were at. And he looked at all of my testing that I had done previous in 2016, looked at all of that, did an exam, and pretty much told me that at this point and with our age that he would have definitely expected us now 5 years into it that we would have gotten pregnant by now, because we're young, we're both healthy, our testing came back I'm normal, so the only thing that I have wrong with me is the endometriosis. But he said that there's just this strange unknown factor about it that prevents women from getting pregnant, and that there really isn't any answers, there's no cures. So his advice to us, and his best option that he could give us at that point, was that we should do IVF, which I had already actually found a doctor for that as well, because I felt like that would be the next step. So when our doctors had told us that we had to do IVF, which is actually in vitro fertilization, that's when it's a big long process. It actually takes about 3 months total, because they have to put you back on birth control, they have to get everything in line, they have to do lots of more testing to make sure my body hasn't changed at all. So they actually would go in and retrieve the mature follicles that I would have at that time. Before, my biggest issue was that my eggs weren't growing, but I had spoken with my doctor, and she said that that wouldn't be a concern with the IVF meds, that they should be plenty strong enough for us to grow big eggs, and that she feels very promising that we would be successful with IVF. So they'd go in and take out my eggs, and then they actually inseminate it with his sperm. And once they make it past a certain day, which is day 5, that's when they actually implant it back into me. And then from that point, you just kind of see if it works. So they kind of bypass everything. They just go put it in there and it implants. So it's not like the regular process where it has to travel through your fallopian tubes and all of that. So it just kind of bypasses any issues that you may have with your
Takes out
body.
the factors.
So the endometriosis really doesn't matter through IVF, because it surpasses all of that and it makes it easier. My doctor actually told me that young endometriosis patients are like the golden ticket winners for these places because they're the most successful. So when I spoke to my doctor, she felt very hopeful that this is something that would work for us. So after Matt and I had got engaged, obviously we knew we were going to get married, and I knew that I had wanted to be with Matt for the rest of my life, but deep down I had this feeling of guilt. Luckily, very early in our relationship, like the second year, when we first started struggling, we had talked about how no matter if we were able to conceive on our own, that we would still have a family, whether we decided to adopt or we decided to foster to adopt, or even if we just decided to fill our home with foster children, that either way we would have a family of our own. But my biggest concern was, as much as I love him, I want the best life for him, and I just thought that if it weren't for me and my health issues, that he could probably have a super normal life, maybe with somebody where he'd be able to conceive super easy and it wouldn't be a challenge. And I can see how other people might feel that way, and honestly that wasn't something I really wanted to tell him, because it's kind of hard to say that, well, maybe you don't want to spend this life with me because I'm kind of broken. But that's kind of how I felt. And even though I knew it wasn't really relevant to us because we were fine with having a family no matter what the means were, I just couldn't imagine if there were families out there who hadn't had those conversations about how hard that would be to kind of feel alone and have those feelings, but not wanting to kind of say them out loud because there's kind of that doubt and that guilt and the shame that's kind of placed on the person who's causing the issues. So I think that was my biggest struggle going into it, and obviously I still wanted to marry him more than anything in the world, and we were both fine with where we were and that we were going to have a family, but that was my biggest struggle along the journey.
We discovered these difficulties early on. Like she had said, it was like 2 years into us dating, and we found out that we were having issues with fertility and that it was going to be a long road, and we didn't know where it was going to end. But we decided that we wanted to do this life together. We wanted to be hand in hand through all of it, and there was no way I was going to pass the chance up to marry the woman of my dreams, and it didn't matter what road we had to take, we were going to take it together.
I think a lot of couples struggle to go through this journey because it is really tasking on a relationship, and it can be if you're not very open and honest with each other about it. So I can definitely see how it would be hard on certain families, but Matt and I have decided from the beginning to be very open about it. But I can just imagine how it is hard on everybody else as well.
You can't forget that you're looking for that small light at the end of the tunnel. She told me something last night that we've gotten 60 no's, and there's still that yes, and those 60 no's are going to make that one yes that much better, that much more exciting. It's something whenever you see families or parents complaining about not getting enough sleep, or complaining about the pregnancy and the morning sickness and craving foods, and that's the kind of stuff we're excited for. We want the sleepless nights, we want the crying baby at midnight, we want that kind of stuff. It's not a burden to us.
It's hard to hear people say, like, oh, well, you get to go out, or you can do what you want, but it's really those people who understand what we've went through because they're feeling the same way and they've had the same comments given to them, and we don't care about any of that. We would much rather have a baby in our home and be able to stay home with the baby and do all those parenting things, and I know when that happens for us, we won't take a second of it for granted.